Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Intentional Guy. We are on air with Dan Clouser today. Dan, did I said the last name right, correct?
Yes, you did. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited about this. Dan has been a coach for many years. He's now doing a podcast, and I think you've written two books. Is that correct?
Yeah, depending on how you count, you could either say two or three, because the first one was originally published in 2012 and then republished last year with 10 new chapters. So sometimes I say two,
Awesome.
sometimes I say three.
I got you. I got you. So, well, it is an honor to have you on here today. And, you know, I'd love for you, let's just start off with you maybe sharing a little bit about yourself, about your, maybe a little bit of your history, but where that's brought you today, because I believe you travel now.
Yes, yeah, we do live full time in an RV. Not in the RV right now. We're actually at my niece and nephew's house right now in Pennsylvania. But I had coached baseball and softball and ran a nonprofit youth sports organization in Pennsylvania for 30 years. And then in early 2019, I took a couple solo trips to one to Texas and Louisiana and one to Orlando, which kind of gave me an itch to follow a little bit in my mother's footsteps, which is why the title of the podcast is The Journey of My Mother's Son, and why this newest book series is The Journey of My Mother's Son. She took an old 1967 Plymouth Valiant back in the mid 80s and took the back seat out of it and put a sheet of plywood in there and a mattress and made it into a bed, and kind of became like, the van life pioneer before van life was a thing, and traveled around the country and volunteered and connected with friends and family. And then, I always admired her story. I never, ever thought it would be my story. And after I took those trips, there was just an incredible serenity that came over me while I was traveling, while I was on the road. And it kind of hit me that it was like, wow, I think this is why Mom did what she did. Like, this is pretty cool. And when I got back from those trips, I'd written like I hadn't written in years. I was in the process of adding the chapters to the first book, The Beauty of a Diamond Through the Eyes of a Coach. But it was a tough go because I was working so many hours. It was tough to sit down, carve out time to write. And when I got back from those trips, man, I wrote like I hadn't written in years. Probably knocked out 3 or 4 chapters in, what seemed like no time. And, I started getting, kind of this feeling that maybe it was time for a new chapter in my life. And it was difficult because the work that I was doing was incredibly fulfilling work. We were working with young people. We're using sports to teach them life lessons. It wasn't all about winning and that sort of thing. And, we were changing lives and we were impacting lives. And, it was a battle for me to kind of accept closing that chapter and opening a new chapter. And it was, it was a test of faith, because I kind of kept going back and forth saying, Lord, is this really what you want? Like I am, I feel there's so much more work that I need to get done where I was. And it was kind of like he was saying to me, it's time to move on. It's time for a new chapter. You did your work here. Now there's more work to be done through, these other avenues of, writing more and podcasting and that sort of thing. So it wasn't an easy decision to do what we're doing now. And when I first ran it by my wife, she thought I'd completely lost my mind. So I, but this was after I had gone through this, I didn't even bring it up to her until I had gone through this, major kind of internal battle myself, trying to figure out if this was really the right thing to do and if it was, really exercising that faith. And so, after our first conversation, we just kind of kept talking, and she was in a position with her job where she had been laid off by a larger corporation a couple years prior to that, and was working for a temp service that had told her it was always going to be temp to permanent. But yet every time the conversation would come up, they'd, basically tell her that they were in a hiring freeze. And that kept happening. And again, after a while, she kind of felt, what, maybe this is a sign. Maybe we do need to start a new chapter. And, I guess after one of those conversations at work, she came home one day and said, all right, I'm in, let's do this. And that's when it all started this new journey. And, I've since published the, again, second or third book, however you want to call it. And that'll be the start of a 4-book series that will come out. Hopefully I'll get the next one done by next spring, and, follow up with the third and fourth volume shortly after that. So, it's been an interesting journey, but now that we're in it, best decision we ever made. We absolutely love it. The people we've met, places we've been, have been absolutely incredible.
That's great. So let me ask you something though. One, I'm intrigued with you being a coach because I think working with young people, I was a youth pastor, and one of the most fulfilling things in my life has been that job when I was a youth minister, because even to this day now, that was 20 years ago. Even to this day now, I will get emails, letters, and stuff from these kids. Or they're not kids now; they're adults.
We always call
And
them kids.
we will. And but I am so encouraged when I hear from them and see how they're doing, because we poured our life into them, right? And you don't always get to see the rewards of what you did, of what you poured into them. But sometimes God will give us just a little glimpse. We'll hear from a few, and we'll get a little glimpse, and it blesses my heart every time that I do. Have you had that experience?
I have. I actually have, the hair on my arms are standing up as you were talking about that, because that's been one of the most rewarding experiences since we've been on this journey, is that we have been able to connect with a lot of my former players who are scattered across the country, whether in Massachusetts or Arizona or Texas or Florida, wherever, and have been able to spend time with them and, seeing, like you said, the fruits of that labor, because as
Yeah.
a coach, a lot of times you're planting those seeds in these kids that are, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. When I'd coached everywhere from 10 and under up to college age kids, so there's a wide range there, and you're planting these seeds. You don't always get to see them come into bloom, so to speak. And that has been one of the most rewarding things. And I think, like you said, it's God really giving me a glimpse of, the work that you did is paying dividends today. It's that ripple effect, and
Yeah.
seeing what these kids are doing now is just such an incredible blessing. So, yeah, as you were telling that story, the hair is literally standing up on my arms, because it's been one of the most incredible things to be able to connect with those guys and sit down. Generally, I have an opportunity to do a podcast with them and, talk to them about where they are today. And again, it's really fulfilling to be able to do that.
It is. And it's funny sometimes. Some of the kids I prayed over the hardest, and that I was like, when we were in the midst of it and you saw what they were going through, you're just like, your heart went out to them, because you're like, are they going to ever get this? And I've had a couple that were my really hard ones. And there's one girl I can think of, one young lady that was in our youth group, and I saw the rebellious path that she was going on. But just recently I got to talk to her, and the words of wisdom that was coming out of her mouth. And, she's like, yeah, she had to go through some things, but she's like, all that things that we taught and went through, those seeds that were planted grew in those moments now. And now she's got her life together and is flourishing. And it's just like, you know, it's so rewarding. that is just one of the most rewarding things that I've experienced in my life, you know.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's amazing, like you said, where some of those kids where you don't think you're getting through to them in that moment, where you're actually speaking to them more than the ones who you're having that conversation. You're like, this kid gets it. This kid gets it.
right.
And then to do, what happened to you in that situation, again, it's incredible. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, now I'm listening, Lord, as to why you have me doing this. Because let's face it, it can be very frustrating at times
Oh,
as a coach, because and again, me as a baseball and softball coach, teaching a game of failure and equating that to life, but it's so much easier to make them understand that they're going to fail in the game as opposed to failing in life. But yet, for us as coaches, sometimes, like, we know we're not going to get the instant gratification, but like we
right.
still are kind of looking for it. Like we want to see our finished product. And the truth is, you know, we're not going to see it in that moment. It's going to be years and years before we see that.
That's right. And sometimes we may never see it until we go to heaven. What impact we had in those young lives, and that's for. I would love to encourage. I know we have some youth pastors and stuff that listen to this, and I just want to encourage you. A lot of times, uh, it's the kids you think that aren't listening. They're listening. They're hearing. They may not want you to know they're hearing it, but they're listening. Just keep being obedient. Keep talking. Keep encouraging, because you're affecting lives even when you don't think you are, you know. So, but I want to talk to you about your travels a little bit. How has that helped you and your growth and everything? You've had some amazing experiences while traveling, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like I said, now that we've done it, we've been doing it now for almost 2 years. We're coming up on our 2 year anniversary here in August. Um, yeah, the experiences have been incredible. We've been able to get involved with an organization called A Year to Volunteer, which is an RV centric volunteer group, and we'll go in and do a project at either a state park or a nonprofit organization or something like that for a 2 week period of time. And there's usually 16 RVs there, so 32 people in most cases, give or take. And the work we've been able to do on those projects has been so incredibly fulfilling. I mean, one of the things that we knew we wanted to do when we started off on this journey was to continue volunteering and continuing that type of work. We really didn't know how it was going to come to play. One of the first things we did kind of on our own is we went to Louisiana after Hurricane Laura had hit, and we have some friends in that area, and just kind of did some, you know, random, uh, restoration work and relief work after the hurricane. And then we stumbled across the Year to Volunteer, and that made all the difference for us, because they, put the projects together. We just show up, and when you see you're impacting those people's lives in that way, it's incredibly, fulfilling. We were able to go back to the Louisiana area just this year and help with the state park there through A Year to Volunteer. And again, seeing how that community just embraced, this group of nomads that showed up to, help get this state park open that had been closed for a couple years. You can't even put into words what it feels like to see their gratitude. And, apart from the volunteering, um, God has given us an incredibly beautiful country,
Mm.
an incredibly beautiful country. And, when you get out west and you see, the Grand Tetons and just, all of these
Wow.
incredible, this incredible natural beauty. And, when you're out on a hike, it gives you an opportunity to get, so close to the Lord, and really strengthen your faith and understand, um, you know, why we're here. So the whole journey has been a huge amount of, spiritual growth for both myself and my wife, Sandy. And, has really been able to, deepen our roots and faith for sure.
Wow. You know, one of the talking points that I saw on yours was about um, embracing living in the moment. Uh, And I kind of like for you to just explain that a little bit to me.
Yeah. Something that I can't honestly say I did a lot prior to traveling. You know, you're always kind of planning for what's ahead. Um, you know, maybe regretting what was in the past,
Yeah.
whatever that might
Yep.
be. And, you know, traveling like this has really given me an opportunity to really be present. Um, one of the things that obviously was difficult in us making this decision was leaving our family.
Yep.
All of our kids are still here in Pennsylvania, and luckily we can get back and visit them. But we are so much more intentional and so much more present in the time that we spend with our family now than what we ever were before. And at the end of the day, um, the only thing that's guaranteed for us is this moment that we're in right now. And I think we've lost some people very dear to us since we've started traveling, which has both reiterated our decision, but again helps us to continue to be more intentional and understand that tomorrow's not guaranteed. Everyone that we lost had plans, had plans of what they were going to do next week or next month or whatever the case is. And I think just that in and of itself has really um, made us embrace those moments. And um, there's a chapter in my book where I talk about um, when we were up in Maine in Old Orchard Beach. We got up early to go see the sunrise on the beach, which was something that my mom did all the time, and she would drag me along with her. And as a 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, I hated it. Like, get up at 5:30 in the morning. Like, no, that's not what I what I want to do. And this particular moment, we got up, about 5:30. I was actually up even before the alarm went off, and we got the dog in his harness and on his leash, and it was about a just under a mile walk to the beach. And we walked down there and saw the sunrise coming up over the ocean, and it was just such a magical moment. And again, one of those things where, as I reflected back, I was like, again, I get it now, why mom did what she did, why she was ever present in those moments. um, and you know moving forward, we've gotten up and seen many of sunrises on the beach or over the mountains or whatever the case is. um, and it's just something we do to really appreciate that, more so than I ever did in my life.
I like that because for me, I lived many years. I want to say probably in a fog, you know, not really, um, I was not intentional in my life. I was letting life lead me instead of me leading life. And I wasn't present in the here and now. And what that caused for me was drifting. I was just drifting. And for me, I really appreciate that part of it because uh, the show before you, we talked about this a little bit. Um, but living in the present, there's a lot of people in today who, and you see it. You go to a restaurant. It cracks me up because you can go to a restaurant, you can see a family sitting at the table with dinner, not communicating to one another. They're all on their phones. We live in a social media world now where
Right.
everything's on that, and people are not engaged in the lives that are in front of them, the gifts God given them with that family. And like you said, we're not guaranteed today, and I just see a lot of people missing some real God moments in their life because they're not present in it. Or we are, you know, even when we're living in pain, you've got to live in that presence in that moment because uh, it's been through some of the trials of life, through some of the most painful things in my life that I've learned some great life lessons,
Right.
that have helped me move forward. but we have to be present in that. And I like how you say, let's embrace that, because we're missing opportunities with our family, uh, with friends, but we're also missing opportunities that God is putting right in front of us to grow even more as a person, because we are, it, we're stuck in that social media world. A lot of people, ev- everything is based on that. Um, that I get I have someone in our life that just made a comment the other day that they didn't feel like they were close to us because, well, you haven't liked anything of mine on Facebook lately, and this and that. That Facebook is not my relationship with you. You
Right.
know, my relationship is real life with you. I to be honest, I could care less about Facebook right now. And the sum of my relationship is not on whether or not I liked your post.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
me being engaged in a conversation with you that is real and authentic. You
Yeah.
know,
And I would suggest that if anybody's really struggling with, how to be present and how to be in the moment, get a dog. Because dogs will teach you how to be in the moment better than anything else in the world. And that's one thing that I talk about all the time with our golden retriever. He is the one who always keeps us in the moment. If he sees we're getting caught up in something, that we've, worked too much on a certain day or whatever, it's like he's there, nudging our arm to get away from the computer and let's go take a walk. Let's take a hike. Let's get out in nature. And, I think God has given us dogs to remind us to stay in the moment for sure.
they do. I saw where you liked it. You liked your walks with your dog. That you do. What's your dog's name?
His name is Youkilis. He's named after an old Boston Red Sox player, Kevin Youkilis. He'd played for the Sox back in the early 2000s. So, um, yes, that's where everybody's like Youkilis. Where's that name come from? And that's where it comes from. Uke for short.
Yep. I had a dog named Monkey. I didn't want this dog at all. I did not want this dog. My wife wanted a puggle, and the beagle in her always got out of our yard somehow. And we had her 2 days. I'm chasing her down. It's 6:30 in the morning. I'm running through my neighbor's yard yelling, "Monkey, monkey." I'm yelling for a monkey. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy. An hour into it, I realized I just named this dog 2 days ago. It doesn't know its name,
Doesn't even know
you
its name.
know? But that dog, I lost her 2 years ago. She passed away 2 years ago. And I cry. I missed 2 days of work. I cried like a baby because that dog, it's amazing how much that dog was embedded in my life,
Absolutely.
but also in some of the worst moments of my life. It's funny how these dogs know, how they sense us, right?
Yep.
And I get why they call him man's best friend because she would always pick me back up,
Yep.
and just had a way of getting me moving in life. Now we have cats. Cats are not that way. Cats,
They could
we're
care
here.
less.
Yeah, we're here to serve
Care less.
them. So I
Yeah.
don't recommend if you're lonely to get a cat because yeah, they live for themselves.
So it's only going to isolate you more if you're lonely and you're with a cat at that point.
That's right. So listen, Dan, I want you to give me about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes here, and I want to talk about the journey of my mom's son. Give us a little insight on that, why we need to read that, because I want to encourage. I told you before the show, I was never a reader. Now I'm a reader, and I think one problem with us today, we're a social media world. We Everything's about what's on the social media or television or whatever, and uh, I found that books are so important to me. It has opened up a whole new thing because one, I can glean from your book some of your experiences that can teach me some things in my life. So I just want to give you a couple minutes. If you would tell us a little bit about this book, though, a little bit more detail.
Yeah. So Yeah, it's The Journey of My Mother's Son, and the subtitle is Many Random Thoughts from the Road, which is exactly what it is. So it chronicles kind of our thought process leading up to selling all of our stuff and buying the RV, and then the first 18 months of our travels. So there's a little bit of repetition in the book and a little bit of redundancy to an extent, because it really is random thoughts. So
Right.
I may repeat myself in chapter 16 as to something I might have said a little bit of the same in chapter 5 or something.
Right.
But it really, the first couple chapters just kind of talk a little bit about my mom and her influence on my life, and as an adolescent. And then from then on, it really is a chronicle of just these times where for me, writing is very therapeutic. So if I'm dealing with something, I write. And so it really is a journal of a sense of the thoughts of going through this process of having this this inward battle of making this decision to leave a career and a vocation that I had loved for 30 years, to start this very much unknown journey
Right.
that we were on. And then just how everything came together. And again, um, you know a walk in the woods or a walk on the beach, how that had an effect on me in that moment. So it's it's a journal of sorts of the first 18 months of our travels. And again, talks a lot about how the dog has kept us in line, and just
Right.
times where we're questioning whether we made the right decision, and then just in the nick of time, so to speak, we interact with someone that we never met before that had just leaves an incredible impact on our life. And I think that's amazing. That's one of the things that I've found um, really interesting on this journey, is just how good people are if you're looking for good people.
Yeah.
And we've been able to meet people who we still have relationships with now that we stay in contact with, as well as ones who I can't even remember their name, but yet
Right.
some interaction just made a huge
Impact.
mark on my life, an impact on my life. And I think those are the ones that probably impact me even more, because again, in that moment, um, that person didn't know what they were doing for me necessarily. um, so I think it comes back down to being intentional, that everyone we interact with, um, we have an opportunity to impact their life in either a positive or a negative way, and that the choice is really ours at that point. And
Right.
I was just on another podcast, and we had talked about, um, I forget what his last question was, but it basically referred to a quote that I use, and I've been using it for all of my emails in my signature block for probably the last 15 or 20 years. But it's a quote by Jackie Robinson, which says, uh, "The significance of our lives is our impact on other lives," and that just rings home so truly. And again, even more so in those one-on-one interactions with people that we aren't going to have a future relationship with, but that truly ends up being our legacy, is how we impacted other lives. So I think a lot of times when people talk about legacy, they think it's this one big canvas, where really it's probably millions of little canvases. I think we have a
Yeah.
different legacy with everyone that we interact with throughout our lives.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you guys, I want to encourage you. We're going to put a link in here for his book. It's reasonable too. You can get it on Amazon for 10.99. The paperback, the hardcover is 16.99. Very reasonable. Also, I'll give you a place if you want. I like autograph copies. And you have a section for that to get an autograph copy.
Yep.
But I really, I'm going to go and purchase your book here today. And what I want to do is I want to have you back, and I want to discuss some of this. Let's let's discuss some of these stories that you have in here. Have a little bit more intimate conversation about the book and everything uh, with you. But I'm really excited and interested in getting this, and uh, then have you back here and talk a little bit more, and we'll dissect maybe some chapters in there, some of the stories that you talk about
I would love
and
that.
share that with our readers. And I want to encourage my people that are listening, 10.99 on Amazon. Go get the book. Let's read this together. And I'm going to schedule it. I was looking at it's not a very, probably takes a week. I could read it in a week here. Uh, if you're a little slow reader, maybe 2 weeks. So, about probably in a month and a half, we'll have Dan back on here and would love to. I'm going to highlight. I like having the paper there so I can highlight the mess out of it and come back and talk about some of that.
I
But
would love
Dan,
that. I'd be honored to be back.
thank you so much for coming on our show today and sharing this with us. I think one of the big takeaways today, guys, as you're listening to this, is really enjoying the moments that you're in,
Yeah.
and if you find that a lot of the stuff that you're involved in, that you just can't find the joy. Sometimes I realize in my life that they're not there because I also am not welcoming them there. I'm not present in them. And sometimes, where there's not opportunity, I'll go create opportunity. I like that you volunteer a lot. I find that volunteering and helping other people brings so much joy to my life. So if you're out there and your life's struggling a little bit, find sometimes pouring into other people helps you to get out of what you're into.
Yeah.
So Dan, I'm looking forward to talking to you again, reading your book. I'm excited about that. Thank you again for being here. And to all my listeners, until next time, just keep being intentional and we'll talk to you soon.